Hello, Bears fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Bears on Tap podcast. I am Ron Luce, joined by my good friend, Mr. Quentin. Q, first off, happy Halloween. A scary day in the Chicagoland area. Probably a little different for you out in your neck of the woods, but we had snow in the Chicagoland area today. So,
Oh, really?
yes, the city of Chicago dressed up as the month of January instead of October. So, that was the scary thing we had going on here from a citywide standpoint. But we got a lot of other, I think, spooky things to get into here on this NFL trade deadline. But Q, before we get into all things football, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. That was it's a good bye week for the Bears. I enjoyed a full Sunday of football without having to worry about watching the Bears and having to put that that noon slot or that 3 o'clock slot. I got to watch all red zone all day. It was wonderful.
That is the one benefit to the Bears being in prime time is you still get a red zone Sunday without having to deal with the heartbreak of what this Bears team has been and what they continue to do, Q. And I think that's maybe a great place for us to start here because Sunday Night Football, obviously the Bears come out, they lay an absolute egg, 30-13. I don't think the final score is at all indicative of how not close this game was because it was all Chargers through and through. The Chargers didn't even have to play their best game in order to get this win, in my humble opinion. Q, just general thoughts. I mean, from this game, right? They looked so good against the Raiders. Obviously, the Raiders are a team, but then you come out and just do that on prime time. I mean, what gives?
I mean, I'll be honest. I had a hard time paying attention to it. I mean, I'm as diehard of a Bears fan as they come. I pay as close of attention to games as anybody, but it's just like, how could you care that much about what was happening on the field after that first quarter? I mean, they're down like 3 scores, right? What felt like almost right off the bat. Chargers were controlling the ball the whole first half, it felt like, and it was just like, I mean, the first play was fun, that bomb to Mooney that was he down? Was he or out of bounds? Was he not? It might have made a difference, but the fact of the matter is after that, it all went downhill really fast. And I mean, I can't help but think, and I think it is hard for Bears fans to become apathetic to the Bears. I really do. I think that they are, it's rooted in Bears fans that my mom would always say, football Sundays were holy in the house, and I hated it. Speaking from my mom's point of view, it's just the Bears are on. That's what's happening. Yep. And there is apathy coming in really hard right now for me. Not just I'm not just talking the fan base. I'm talking someone who spends hours a week watching their all 22 to give offensive and line breakdowns and look at the rookie defensive tackles. And I'm starting to. I feel like I'm tuning them out a little bit as far as what's actually happening on the total team, because it's it's hard to love football when you're caring about the Bears right now. It just is.
It really is, Q. I have to agree, truthfully. I really do, because to your point, right? Sunday football, right? Yeah, it's the Bears. It's always the Bears, right? I got to go and was in person at the Raiders game, which, you know how weird it felt being at. They've only won 5 games in the last 2 years, Q, but I was at 2 of them. And it's the weirdest thing ever, because I'm like, cool, I got to see a couple of Bears wins. And there's a lot of season ticket holders that go, I just came here to watch them lose 7 fucking games this year at home. And it's hard to, I think a lot of Bears fans are truly just starting to not give a shit about the Bears and really just kind of watching football as a whole, kind of as a whole product, right? Watching the NFL as a whole, paying closer attention to their fantasy teams, paying, closer attention to the bets that they're putting in on, all the different sports books on any given Sunday. And like you said, Q, just starting to kind of tune out this team, because we had the expectations, even here at Bears on Tap, coming into the season, that this was going to be a building year. So it's going to be Justin Fields taking that 3rd-year leap as quarterback. This was going to be, some good things, obviously still probably a lot of bad things, but at least progression forward. I think we can only sit here and humbly say there's been maybe 3 or 4 players that we've probably could confidently sit here and say have done what we wanted to see at the beginning of the season. Darnell Wright's certainly one of them. I think we've seen flashes from the young D tackles who are two of your favorite guys to follow. Tyreek Stevenson has given us some good things as a rookie player. But when you look at it, and then DJ Moore has been fun when he actually gets used and they throw him the friggin' football. But like outside of that, it kind of is kind of a what gives Q. And I agree with that wholeheartedly because it almost felt like the broadcast was struggling with this game too, dare I say, Q, because it was so one-sided. This was a Tyson Bagent slob fest on Sunday football. I mean, every opportunity they got to highlight his dad, they got to highlight him, whatever it was. And I get it. It's a great story. He's an undrafted rookie, a D2 product, which again, historically, unless you play D1 football, the odds are stacked against you. I mean, the odds are stacked against you if you play D1 football. And he's here and he's getting to play and he made a roster and, you know, he's done all these things that are truly defying the odds. But then they show Justin Fields and they like dismiss that he's hurt and dismiss all these other things. And then after the fact, Q, after that game and after the broadcast, you start to hear these reports that like the Bears are almost trying to like internally sabotage the media to not talk about Justin Fields because they don't want to be coached. 670 The Score, they had a great soundbite about, a rant from their program. And it was, just asking like, if you don't want to coach this guy, that's on you. Like, that's not the player's fault. And it just, you know what, Q? I think another part of what we just discussed of how hard it is to watch the Bears right now is it is just this team feels like an absolute clown show right now. On a week-to-week basis, something goes wrong, whether it's your D coordinator just leaving effectively under still unknown circumstances. Your head coach has no answers for the media. And the team is just in complete disarray right now, Q. And I think the fan base is just finally sick and tired of what has become Bears football in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, from the coaching standpoint, like I don't see how there's any accountability in that building. Like I can't imagine there being any because what's the first thing when Eberflus was hired? Hits, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The least hits thing possible is tons of missed tackles, right? Missed tackles all over the field and like the
horrendous.
And that's what we see, every Sunday. That's what we see. And it's just like if something like hits, I feel like can work with the right leadership and the right level of execution of it, of like how you're processing it, how you're communicating it, but that's clearly not happening. And if it's not something with like hits, like any acronym that you're trying to get your football team to live by, if it's not serious, it's a joke. Like there's no in between. It's either it's completely serious or it's a complete joke. And I think it's closer to a complete joke than anything serious.
Speaking of jokes, Q, did you see the meme? I don't know who put it out. And I always feel so bad because I need to start like writing down who to give credit. I'm so bad at it. Not that one. It was Kevin Warren having that like call sheet in his hand. And they zoom in on it and it says BU like on Nagy's. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
I saw that and I started laughing. But you know what, Q? Oh, like you said, right? Like it's a disarray, it's a clown show. Like nobody can take this team seriously. It got to the point where Kevin Warren doing the was like the most memorable thing that was on the internet during Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I mean,
what is Kevin Warren thinking? No, nor should he be. They looked horrendous. Yeah. Absolutely horrendous. Q, I got to ask you one more question.
Well,
go ahead.
On that note, though, there's one thing that I got to say about it. Like, there is because they showed Kevin Warren, right?
Yeah.
And then they showed Ryan Poles. And it was like.
You mean the big RP behind him?
Yeah. Yeah. But the contrast between these guys' expressions was, I thought, said a lot. Because it was Warren looked convicted. He looked angry. He was writing notes, crossing things off. Like he looked like he was a man on a mission for something.
Yeah.
Whatever it might have been. And I thought Poles almost looked a little like out of touch or out of like just
A little
like
lackadaisical.
yeah, because like he's watched this over and over and over, it's like at
He's
some
numb
point
to it
that's
almost at this point.
yeah, and I almost wonder if that's the worst thing you can be, but that's how it felt. Like looking at the two different shots that they gave you, it was like those are two men thinking different things.
Yeah. And, I think along those lines, Q, and it's almost funny. It's like you read my mind with the question I was going to ask you, because you almost set it up perfectly for me. I had this conversation with my dad today, and I have fully jumped on this bandwagon now. I think it took me a little bit of time to fully dip my toes in the water. Granted, it's been a couple weeks since I've had the pleasure of joining you here on Bears on Tap. I've taken the cannonball plunge. Kevin Warren, who very clearly, like you said, right, looks like a man on a mission. He's writing notes. He's angry. He's upset. He wants to see this team go in the right direction. I bet you at the end of that notepad, Q, at least in my humble opinion, it says everyone goes at the end of the season. Everyone goes. Everybody from Poles to Eberflus. I know we all think that guys like Ian Cunningham, very respected around the league. He's going to find a new job somewhere. It's all good. But Kevin Warren, to me, like you said, Q, is just, he looks at this and goes, what the hell is this? Like, what is going on? So, Q, I have to ask you, especially now after what you just said with Warren's expressions and everything. Do you think it is truly everybody's gone at the end of the year, or is there something that's going to give us the Sunday scaries on Halloween here and really kind of piss off a lot of Bears fans where somebody sticks around that probably shouldn't?
So one thing that I still have a hard time fully seeing is the McCaskies buying out what's left of Eberflus's contract and Pole's contract. Like that's one thing, like just the cash aspect of that. I mean, I don't know their finances, but supposedly they're, we always hear they're cash poor, and like that could be something that's tough, especially when cash is very important for building a stadium. But that aside, if I ignore that, I mean, so going into, because today changed some of my opinion on this. And going into today, I was like, 60-40 as far as like my opinion. If I was making the decisions, that I would just 60% said I want a clean slate. It might not be fair. It might not be the right thing to do from a personal perspective, but like from the organizational perspective, line up the GM, head coach, quarterback on the same timeline, get everyone, all the ducks in a row. Everything makes sense together. And a part of that is tough too is the scouting department. If you're going to overhaul a scouting department in the offseason, because a new GM is going to want his scouts, right? And that's something that's tough with a new GM when you're saying we got all this draft capital. But ultimately, I the reason I was 60% on that side is you're going to have a line all the way to, South Chicago for the GM job for the Bears this offseason. With the picks they have, the cap space they have, the lack of bad contracts that they have, like this is a clean slate for anybody. There's nothing to clean up. There is nothing. I mean, some of the drafting hasn't necessarily panned out the last 2 years, but like a lot of that's still to be determined. So you don't even feel that bad about that. Like it's about as sweet of a gig as you can get as a GM coming in and saying, I don't have to clean up anyone's mess. There is no mess because the last guy, he cleaned up the guy before him's mess and he really didn't do anything after that. So it's kind of just, he made a really easy job for me to jump right into. Now the flip side of that, I said I was 40% keeping him. Like, I almost feel like there's I don't know, maybe a 50-50 shot that whoever you hire next is better than Poles, but he hasn't proven to me that he's bad necessarily, but he also hasn't proven to me that he's good. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if that's worth making sure you're keeping around. is really where I end up on it. And today, the stuff with Jalen Johnson today is just like, it's upsetting. I think it's a major black eye on polls. This is the second straight year where one of the team's top 5 players,
easily,
is trying to get a new contract extension because he's about to be a free agent, and it ends in them saying, they don't want to be a Bear.
Yeah,
like that's a trend. That's bad, and especially if you throw in James Daniels, that's 3 years.
Yeah, it is bad. It really is bad. And first off, shout out to everybody that's been jumping in the comments. If you are watching over on the X platform, we love you. We just can't see your comments because that's just how shit rolls. If you want to join the conversation, like our good friend, Mr. Jonathan Nani here, you can head over to the YouTube, subscribe to the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube page, and you'll always hit that bell button too, so you know when Bears on Tap goes live. But as Johnny says here in the comments, he says, it's honestly impressive how Ryan Poles has already general managed his way into incompetency this quickly. And, Skokes has got the confusion on his face too. And I think we all have this confusion on our face because you nailed it on the head, Q. I think this is the problem with what Ryan Poles has done. Because I think if you silo every piece of what a GM does, you can grade him differently, right? You can say, well, his drafts, jury's still out, right? We haven't seen a second year of Braxton Jones yet, who in a rookie season looked like a really good pick as a 5th rounder for your left tackle spot. We saw some upside of Kyler Gordon late last season. Then he got hurt this year. So we really haven't seen a full, development yet of Kyler Gordon. Same thing kind of with Jaquan Brisker, especially this year now with him being in concussion protocol. But then you also have the Velus Jones pick. And then you have some other picks like that are really just kind of a black eye right now. And just oh, what did you do, man? Why did you think this was a good move? But then you look at Darnell Wright, which has been a great draft pick, obviously. And he's the baller that everybody thought he was going to be. I mean, he's looked at everything that we hoped he would be as a Bear. And then obviously, right, in terms of trades, DJ Moore, getting what could be number 1, number 2 pick in this year's coming draft. Even if the Bears somehow managed to play their way into a 6th or a 7th pick, I mean, you still had probably 2 top 10 picks in this year's draft, no matter what, because of how Carolina is. That's huge. Great job. And you got another pick the following year, a 2nd rounder the following year. But then the Claypool trade, right? And how much that just looks like a stain, effectively giving away a 1st round pick for a guy that's not even in your organization anymore, less than a year later.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, right, you add in now these blemishes, the Roquan Smith situation, James Daniels from a few years ago, and now Jalen Johnson. And I think this is a perfect transition, Q, into kind of some of the things that transpired on Tuesday. Obviously, it was NFL trade deadline. There was a lot of speculation. Late night report comes in last night that Jalen Johnson requests a trade because the two sides could not come to a contract extension. Of course, Ryan Poles gives his bullshit that has now fallen on deaf ears about, well, we want to keep our homegrown talent and blah, blah, blah. And it's 2 sides and whatever. I don't give a fuck. Nobody believes you anymore, dude. We've seen this story over and over again now. So like you said, JJ effectively says he doesn't want to be here anymore. That's one of your top players not wanting to re-sign. And then rather than the Bears being sellers and maybe going for more draft capital, because draft capital is good for a team that's dog shit like the current Chicago Bears are, you go give away what's going to be probably a top 40 pick, and you go get Montez Sweat, who, very good ball player, his blank name says here in the comments. So Sweat is a dude. 2nd rounder for him is a solid move. Maybe. But I think it becomes a solid move, assuming you could get him locked up to a new contract because he is a free agent at the end of this year. So, Q, I mean, thoughts on the Jalen Johnson situation, if you have anything else to add from before. And then on top of it, I mean, let's get into this Montez Sweat, trade a little bit here. And you wrote a great article over at ontapsportsnet.com about what he's going to bring to this Bears defense. I mean, what does he bring to the defense now that you are keeping a guy like Jalen Johnson in the fold? Because obviously JJ was not traded today, but effectively came out and said, I'm not going to negotiate anymore with the Bears. I'm going to free agency one way or another.
Yeah, so starting with Jalen Johnson, I mean, it's been the trend with Poles, right? It's been got here, said James Daniels isn't the kind of guy that we want. James Daniels has been a pretty darn good offensive guard for the Steelers since leaving. And replace him with Lucas Patrick, because that's what you get in free agency. That's what you get when you spin the roulette wheel of going to the market to fill your needs. Like, so creating these needs, like it's just twice now it's ended up between that and Roquan Smith. I mean, that was a trade rather than letting him walk. So at least you got something. Like, if you know you're not going to retain a guy, getting something for him is something I can respect. But replacing him with a big money contract to Tremaine Edmonds, I mean, it was a little less than Roquan ended up signing for, which was pretty much what he told the Bears he wanted. So it wasn't a giant difference. I think some of the guaranteed dollars might have been fairly different, but like, Roquan is a bona fide playmaker, not a fit for Eberflus's defense, whatever you want to say. He made plays last year, even if he made bad plays too. He made some really good plays that won you football games. And you replace that with Tremaine Edmonds, who, I mean, I like Tremaine Edmonds, but I don't think he's the same caliber football player as Roquan Smith. So you're sitting there saying twice now, we have had a guy up for extension that we downgraded from the next year because we just didn't want to bring him. We didn't want to meet in the middle. I only want to say meet his demands. We didn't want to discuss. We didn't want to come off our price one bit, because our price is our price and that's it. That's done. And it seems like the same thing is happening with Jalen. I'll tell you this. Corners as good as Jalen Johnson don't hit free agency often. And that's not because I think Jalen Johnson is some all-pro caliber cornerback or even a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback. Good corners do not hit free agency. And when they do, it's usually because there's a larger problem, like a J.C. Jackson who got signed by the Chargers and was awful there. And I'm not sure exactly what that is. I think he was really good at what Belichick wanted him to do. But like, as far as scheme versatility, was probably low. Jalen Johnson has scheme versatility out the wazoo. He can run just about any scheme that the Bears can throw out there next year. He has got a fit for any defense that they end up running next year under a new coach and new D coordinator. Like, there is a lot to like, and to do this again, it just feels like insanity, hitting your head against the wall and just over and over and over, and then wondering why you have a headache.
Yeah, 100%. Right. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And that's what the Bears continue to do with, like you said, elite playmakers. You claim you want to do this thing the right way and rebuild the right way, and yet you're rebuilding the wrong way. You're getting rid of superior talent for inferior players to what? Keep drafting in the top 10 for 5-6 years?
It's not even like we're talking veterans.
No.
James Daniels was 23. Roquan was 24 or 25, I think. And Jalen Johnson right now is 24 and a half. Like, these guys were young. Right.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's not if it was outrageous demands from a player, it would be a different thing. But to be upsetting them to this level, there is some weird stuff going on. People are reasonable, right? I work under the assumption that human beings are reasonable.
Yeah.
And if there is not something weird or something like, just, it doesn't add up, that there would be this unreasonable of responses from players 2 years in a row now for, I mean, it's a lack of bedside manner. It's a lack of ability to come to a table and have a real conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's clearly a greater problem to be had here, because it's one thing if it's one player, right? Like, you have one really bad negotiation, it just doesn't go well. Shit happens, right? That happens all the time across the NFL. We see that on a pretty regular basis, I think. Not all the time per se, but at least a regular basis. But this is 3 years now. 3 different players in a very short tenure with Ryan Poles at the helm. It's starting to get to the point where, like you said, Q, it's kind of, something's wrong, and it's very concerning, because if you can't give a good player fair money, how are you going to continue to build a winning football team? That's just not realistic at all. And I looked up here on good old Spotrac, Q, kind of what the projected market value is for a guy like Jalen Johnson. This year is only making $1.6 million. Insanely good contract for what he's become as a Bears corner. They are saying 4 years, $70 million. That comes out to about 17.5 per season. I think to your point, right? People are reasonable. Humans are reasonable. I think it's a reasonable number for Jalen Johnson. He's a number
Yeah.
one corner in the NFL. Is he a top 3 corner? No, not necessarily. But that's not top 3 money, right? Top 3 money is Jair Alexander getting 21 million a year, or Denzel Ward getting just a hair over 20 million a year, or even Marshawn Lattimore, who at the time signed a 5-year deal that was sniffing $100 million. Like, those are the top dogs. Getting a guy like Jalen Johnson for 70 million bucks over 4 years at 24 years old is a phenomenal contract. And then, to your point, Q, if it's a veteran who's asking you for a 7-year or 6-year contract at $20 million a year as a 29-year-old in the NFL, which we all know how bodies break down, then I understand we're going to balk at this a little bit. Let him go somewhere else. Let him get paid by somebody else. Fair. But this guy's, like you said, he's 24. He's not going to be 25 for like another 165 days.
Yeah. I mean, and that sounds right. Like 16 to 18 is what I think his range is about.
Yeah.
It's the back half of the top 10, not because he's a top 10 corner, but because in a year or two, that'll be top 20 corner money. And that's why you're willing to give him an overpay early, because it'll be a deal late, right? And you can even, if you're worried about the health, you have all this cap flexibility. So much cap flexibility. You can front load that thing to be out of it in 2 years if you want to.
Fact. 100%. And I think that's something that gets forgotten about a little bit in the NFL, right? Because every league has a different salary cap structure. You look at leagues like the NHL, right? They operate on it's an average annual value cap hit. So, you can front load it from a dollars and cents standpoint of what they're actually being paid. But at the end of the day, the cap hit is the cap hit. In the NFL, there's a lot of finagling that can be occurred with the salary cap if you know how to do it. And to your point, you front load the deal when you have all of this cap flexibility. You don't have a starting quarterback making franchise quarterback money. You can afford to eat 2 years of Jalen Johnson making $22 million if it means the back half of those 4 years he's making $13 and $14 million, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole different ball game. And again, to your point, kid, they just refuse to come to the table with these guys. And it's starting to get old, honestly. Like, as a Bears fan, I'm starting to be like, well, how in the hell are you going to guarantee that we get good players in the future?
How are you going to re-sign Montez Sweat?
Perfect transition, Q. How are you going to sign? Because they gave away, because mind you, for those that maybe didn't see today, I understand people were working and it was a busy day. Chase Young gets traded to the 49ers for a 3rd-round pick. That's going to be a late third, as you and I discussed before the show. This Montez Sweat pick is going to be a top 40 pick. And right now it sits as, I think they said number 35 is where it currently sits in the grand scheme of it all. If the Bears are going to have this type of bedside manner on negotiating, if they just gave up effectively a 1st-round pick, because usually the guys that go in the top 40 are like 1st-round talents, right? Like, guys always slip. We see it every year. If they just gave that up for a guy that's going to walk potentially in free agency, or that you're going to have to franchise tag for 2 years just to keep him around, that is a horrendous move. I like Montez Sweat, the player. I think we're both on that same page. I think Montez Sweat, the player, phenomenal. Awesome. Love that. That's not what I'm concerned about. My concern lies with the incompetency that I don't think either one of us expected the show. We got our little rundown up and ready to go. But like, this show has really turned into just highlighting what is now feeling like just maybe all-time incompetency from the Chicago Bears front office, which says a lot because it's a bad track record that this front office has, no matter who the fuck's in the top.
Competency is a low bar in Chicago.
Oh my God. It's awful. It's awful. And like, dude, that's where I want to know. Like, obviously, Sweat, good player. I want to hear from you what he brings to this team. But like, where's your concern level at with getting him re-signed? Because right now, like, from an outsider view, let's be honest. If I'm getting moved at the trade deadline as an NFL player, I want to go to a team that's contending, like Chase Young did. Went to the 49ers. They're a Super Bowl contender. Depending who you
Well, I mean, so I want to believe that they are looking ahead enough that they're saying, we're not trading for a guy that we don't think we can get back in this building. You know, That's where like you hope that's the bar of competency across the NFL. You're not trading real strong assets like a top 40 pick for a player who's a free agent in 9 games and doesn't want to be in your building. Like that that would be rough to ever recover from as a GM. But
That's a
so under that
fireable offense,
assumption,
in my humble opinion.
yeah. So under that assumption, you feel like you can get him back and you can re-sign him. I'm sure you've had discussions with the agent about what compensation needs to look like to get it done. But if you hit these snags, if you end up upsetting the player and he doesn't even want to negotiate anymore, as we've seen the Bears do in the past, like recently, suddenly, you already know if that's even an option that you think is possible, then I I just don't understand the purpose of the trade because you already did that with Jalen Johnson. You need to franchise tag him if he won't come back to the table just to make sure you get some compensation for him leaving because you're going to be needing to sign so many free agents next year. You're not getting a comp pick for him. It's as simple as like the Bears are not getting comp picks next year. They're the way the comp pick formula works. For every free agent you lose, if you sign free agents of near equal value, it's canceled out and you don't get comp picks. So a Jalen Johnson comp pick is not happening. So you only get one franchise tag. And if you have the possibility of having 2 players needing the tag, that's just poor management, poor roster management, poor planning. So I'm working under the assumption that they will get something done. They feel confident that they do get something done, an extension with Sweat. And at that point, I actually like the move because I do think Sweat is probably one of the more underrated edge rushers in the NFL. I think the length that he has 35 and 3/4 inch long arms. Like for anyone out there who has no reference, because why would you? The threshold for tackles in the draft for arms is like 33 inches. So that's 2 3/4 of an inch longer than that. That there are not many guys on this earth with arms that long. And why does arm length matter? I mean, I'm sure you can speak to that, Ron, but like the ability to get into your opponent's chest and control them, like it just the way this guy controls the edge is so impressive. Like everything looks so smooth and so just
Yeah.
easy for him. But Ron, why as a D lineman, why is length a hard thing to handle as a blocker?
Well, I mean, because you nailed it on the head, Q, right? As offensive linemen, your opponent's chest determines everything, right? You can't hold outside the shoulders. Everything's in here. So in order to control a guy, that's where you're delivering punches. That's where you're locking up with him if it's in the run game. Everything's inside. Everything's inside the chest. And there is nothing more frustrating in this world. Think about it. Think about it this way. This is like the regular person like example of this. Remember when you were a little kid and like your older sibling would do something or take something of yours and you're like, give me it back. And they got their hand on your head, keeping you away. And you're, yeah. That's exactly the type of thing it is. That's exactly what it is. If you can keep your opponent further away from your chest, you have the leverage. You have the upper hand. You have the high ground for all the Star Wars fans out there. This in the case of Sweat, I saw the one highlight today where he practically bench pressed the tackle with one arm. And again, we don't get to see a lot of the Commanders in Chicago, right? Like unless they're physically playing them. The dude's length is so he doesn't look human.
Outrageous.
It's insane. It's so stupid because he can get into a tackle. And like you said, Q, I think probably the most underappreciated part of Montez Sweat's game is what he does in the run game as an edge rusher and that edge, sealing the edge. He can literally take 3 steps up the field, sit there, bench press the tackle with one arm, and he has established the outside. Now either the running back's got to cut back in, which should be good for players like TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, or he's got to try to run around him. Oh, and then Montez Sweat is kind of an athletic freak who's going to be able to get out there and make a play.
His spider chart is insane.
Oh, I need to look at it.
It's just a big circle, and then one indent for bench press because his arms are too long to put up a lot of reps.
Yeah, exactly. But he's bench pressing tackles with no problem. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that to me. Between that and his health, and obviously Chase Young, I think the health issues are well documented, and probably why the Bears balked at it because there were reports over the weekend that the Bears were looking to pull the trigger on a potential Chase Young trade. But to me, Sweat, although older, is to me the more surefire bet because you know what you're getting with him, and he's also a very complete defensive end, which the Bears do not have. Right? You have Unique Ngakoue, who's your pass rush specialist. But like Sweat's going to defend the run on first and second down, and he's going to be able to get to the quarterback on third down. He can do it all, and he's just a physical freak.
Yeah. And the thing that's because like length is so important, but like the upper body strength to maximize your length is just as important when you're talking about that. And like you said, he has the upper body strength to really utilize his length to the maximum, and it's awesome to watch. It's fun to watch. Honestly, you don't realize how good of an athlete this guy is on the field either, because he's so smooth. And it's like there's a saying in scouting, like the smoothest guy. I forget what the exact saying is, but it's like the smoothest athletes are the best athletes because they're so athletic. You can't even tell that it just looks normal. It doesn't look like some feat of mankind when they're doing stuff, because they make it look easy. And that's kind of where Sweat is. Like I was watching him and I was thinking, this guy's not the most twitched up guy ever, you know. It's like I almost felt like his athleticism might have been lacking a little. And I saw his testing, it was like, holy shit. And I was watching a little closer, it was like, okay, I see it now. I mean, now that I'm like, I realize how fast he is, how agile he is. Like I'm seeing it now, but it didn't look like he was doing anything that difficult.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree, man. I think the Sweat move, all things considered, is the right move. I think it's the better move in my opinion. I know there's a lot of people that say, well, Chase Young's ceiling is higher. If the dude's hurt and you don't know how bad it is, it's not worth the gamble, because
the guy had 3 sacks in the last 2 years before this year. Like, I mean, there's a lot of question marks on Chase Young for me. Like if I were pulling the trigger, Sweat was always the guy I wanted. Like I was locked in on, even if it was in free agency next year, I was hoping the Commanders were re-signing Young and letting Sweat hit the market, because Sweat was the guy that I saw and I was like, that's the sure thing, that you know what you're getting there. The consistency's there every year. And you know, the underrated thing, that length, players who have that length and that strength, they don't take body blows like players who don't. They don't get surprised by guys coming in on them as often. With the way how controlled of a style he plays, it's not like he's taking shots that he's not expecting very often, because he's keeping guys at bay and no one's getting into his body. Those guys tend to age pretty well.
It's a good point. That's a really good point. And a very, I think, undersold point of this whole thing is that he should, as long as stays healthy, should age very gracefully as a ball player. And again, I think further justifies an investment from the Bears for that, 5 and 6 year term, where sure, maybe by that 6th year, he's not quite the player he is now, but he's only 27. He's going to be 28 the start of next year. If you give him a 6-year deal, you get him in his prime. Like you get him in that 28 to 32 range. And then if that last year and a half of the deal doesn't look as pretty, by the time the NFL cap goes up the way it's projecting, that's not going to look bad. Like it's going to be okay. So I hope they get him signed. That's all I'm going to say.
Too. I mean,
otherwise it's going to be ugly in the city of Chicago.
It's really Brian Pohl sent us mixed messages all year, and it's nothing but the same right now. And I love the player. I hope he's around for a while.
Completely agree with you. Q, we've hit on all of our points, but we wanted to do something fun. You and I have been talking about doing this for a couple of weeks now. We've got just a fun exercise for our viewers. This is more so something I think that humbly looks better to watch on the YouTube. So please, if you want to go venture over there and take a look, if not, listen along with us here on podcast. You're probably familiar with how these things work. But Q, we're going to do a little bit of a little tier chart.
Yeah.
And what are we doing a tier chart of, though, Q? Because I think this is very important for people to know. This is why it's going to be fun. We're having some Halloween fun on Spooky Day. What are we ranking
Yeah.
today?
Bears quarterbacks who were never intended to start, but ended up starting.
Oh, yes.
So backup quarterbacks, but we had to put some like criteria on it because like Mitch Trubisky was a backup at one point. Like, was
Right.
Andy Dalton a backup? Like, was so was Justin Fields a backup because he was at one point. So like, we had to put some rules on it, and the general rule was they were not intended to be the starter at week one or like being sat as a rookie. Like something like that. And the criteria was 20 plus pass attempts in any single year.
There you have it. Let's get into this thing, dude, because I'm actually kind of excited for this. I'm not even going to sit here and lie to you. Who is that first name? Is that Mr. Bajan?
That is Tyson Bagent. And our categories here are the franchise.
Yes.
Legends of Soldiers Field. You heard me say it right. Soldiers.
Like every Chicagoan that mispronounces everything.
Next one is Axel Brian Hoyer, the Destroyer. And if you're not aware, Brian Hoyer's true first name is Axel. He chooses to go by Brian.
Hilarious.
Next one is Legends of Bourbonnais.
No.
Then Best Shape of His Life, where I graciously put Matt Nagy.
Matt Nagy.
We all know he could suit back up. Then Rooting for Him, where we see Mitch Trubisky's Camry.
Oh my goodness.
And then Who the fuck is that guy?
This is incredible. Oh, and Q, you did a lot of this work, so kudos to you, man. Like this is what we live for on a day like today. Because again, it's been a mixed messages day, I think, for Bears fans, and what better way to have some fun than to rank effectively Bears backup quarterbacks over the last 20 some odd years.
I'm generally curious how many games of all these quarterbacks combined I've watched as starters. It might be more than Jay Cutler.
It might. That's
so what? What do we
it.
think for Bagent?
It's hard with Bagent because I feel like it's so early in the Bagent mania, right? Like I don't think he's quite like a legend of Soldier Field or the franchise. I don't think he's up there quite yet. I would be confident enough to put him somewhere in the Legends of Bourbonnais to Axel Brian Hoyer the Destroyer category.
I'm gonna put him in Axel.
Okay.
Because I think Brian Hoyer is about what you can like realistically expect the upside of Bagent to be. And that's like, we're so early in it. He's shown stuff already, which I think is a really good sign. I think him as like a long-term backup makes like I feel pretty good about it. So I think Brian Hoyer the Destroyer, aka Axel, is the way to go there.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Is that Mr. Oh, is that the man himself? Is that USC Trojan legend? Oh my goodness.
So where are we thinking for Barkley, who was at one point the franchise? If we're being honest with ourselves,
I do. And then he remember those days. You know what, man? Where do you put him? I want to see where you put him because I've got one in mind that
I think Legend of Soldiers Field because he had some legendary performances out there before it came crash. Like we thought he might be the franchise. Like we all had that spark in our brain of what if Matt Barkley's it? But then it wasn't. So like I feel like that's what Legend of Soldiers Field is.
Okay. I like it. I'm a fan. Who do we got up next? I'm trying to see these.
Is Consume weigh in.
Oh, there we go.
Henry Burris. Who I mean, personally, I think he's rooting for him because he had a great story. And that's about it. Like, who the fuck is that guy? Maybe, but like
that teeters for me. He teeters on that. I think because of the story, I think we can put the rooting for him category. I really do.
Yeah. Okay.
But he definitely teeters on the who the fuck is this
guy?
Yeah,
he is. It's like he's in the rooting for him just because of the good story. It's like, but if it wasn't for the story, it's who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Next up,
100%
we got
agreed.
Jason Campbell.
Oh, baby. You know, I think Jason Campbell very appropriately fits. He's in the best shape of his life. Like
Oh,
I,
nailed it.
that's the perfect spot for him. Like he was never anything special, but it was like, okay, he's a guy that has some starting experience. I think that's where we were gonna put him.
And
Um,
I just had to zoom way in because I couldn't read the name of the next guy.
who
But
the next guy is?
we got Chris Chandler coming in hot.
Oh boy,
Getting back to our childhood. I know you thought about buying a Chris Chandler jersey at one point in your life.
I think I'm at the point in life where now I would lean more on getting a Chris Chandler Falcons jersey than I would a Chris Chandler Bears jersey, just because of what he was. But I don't know. Where do you put him, Q? This one's a little tough for me.
Chris Chandler, best shape of his life.
Okay, I like that. I don't hate that.
Because he was over the hill when he got here. He did some nice things, but it was like this has a very short time span on it, a very short life to it. So that's kind of what I had in mind for best shape of his life category. And Jason Campbell's whole career was kind of like that. So
it really was. It fits. It fits. I see that next name. I know that guy. That's Carolina Panthers. That's Carolina legend, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Jimmy Clausen.
Who the fuck is this guy? I can't even put him in the rooting for him because I was never.
Mel Kiper's not going to be happy with that.
Good.
All right. So now we got Todd Collins.
Didn't Todd Collins have like one really okay game for the Bears?
He won a game. I'm not sure if he was okay.
Okay.
But
I do remember them winning a game with him at quarterback. Like
it was against the Panthers, I want to say. And I think he had like 2 interceptions and no touchdowns, but I think they won.
Atrocious. Ugh. Where do you put him, Q? Be honest with me.
Who the fuck is this guy? Because Todd Collins never really did it. He was a career backup who was over the hill when he got to like Chicago. It was just like he's collecting a paycheck, and we gave him a start because we absolutely had to because we were down to our third QB.
Fact, 100%. That's where I was going to put him. I just wanted to see if we were on the same page.
Right. Now we got Chase Daniel.
Ooh. I would put him in the Axel Brian Hoyer the Destroyer category.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty clear one.
Like, I was a big Chase Daniel guy, and he really didn't play that bad when he was asked to come in and play in favor of Mitch when Mitch was hurt. So I was a big Chase Daniel guy. Plus, that dude lived a life. What did he make? Like for 9 total NFL games, he made like $40-something million.
Sports Finance Hall of Fame. Like, absolutely crushed it.
I want to be that guy when I grow up.
We all do.
Legendary.
All right, next up, I believe this is Nick Foles.
Oh, baby. Do you mean the legend of Soldier Field?
I almost want to put him in franchise.
No, do it.
Just because of his screw you Nagy game at the his very last game as a Bear where he goes out and wins. Like
yes. The screw you Nagy game, and then the very publicly calling out Nagy on the sideline, like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And the Falcons come back. Like those 3 games alone,
Yeah, he's above legend.
Supreme. Yeah. He gets the rule supreme.
Next up here, we got good old Brian Griese.
This one's hard for me. Because I was a Brian Griese fan. Like I remember Brian Griese, like Broncos, Buccaneers, Brian Griese, even that little stint he had with the Dolphins, Brian Griese. So like, I was always a Brian Griese fan. So for me, like I want to put him somewhere between like Legends of Bourbonnais and like Axel Brian Hoyer the Destroyer.
So I see him as Legends of Bourbonnais.
Okay.
Because that's like, he was the competition, brought in for Grossman, but
Mhm.
he wasn't good enough to really compete.
Right.
Like, and it was like he looked awesome in Bourbonnais. We always remember that. Like, so
Mhm.
I think he's Legends of Bourbonnais.
I like it. I like it.
All right, next
Oh.
one is good old Caleb Haney.
You mean the franchise, Q?
The franchise? Okay.
He's at least a Legends of Soldiers
I think
Field.
Legends of Soldiers Field
Yeah,
because he was like, so he came so close to doing good things, and then it just all went downhill.
Could you imagine if he started in the Super Bowl for the Bears?
Yeah, can you imagine if he like the step before that? Can you imagine if he pulled off the comeback? Like, oh
Would've
my
been
god.
Nuts.
that, that Steelers team would have destroyed him.
1000%. Oh, it would have been horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. I love that we have a pair of number 12s too as Legends of Soldiers Field. I really do.
Yeah.
Like that makes it even better, in my humble opinion. Oh boy.
All right, so this one it's Brian Hoyer.
Yeah. It's
Brian
Axel.
Hoyer is excuse me, Axel. Axel Blum.
Brian is Axel and Axel is Brian.
All right, next one got a zoom way in. Chad Hutchinson.
Oh,
I was very limited on my picture options for Chad Hutchinson, by the way.
that's fair. That's fair. Q, I'll let you take the lead on this one because there's two spots I could put him and neither one of them are good.
Legends of Soldiers Field, man. He beat the Vikings in like week 16 or 17 that year, and everyone got all hot for Chad Hutchinson and what he was gonna be now that he turned a corner with the Bears.
Wasn't he in his like 9th season too by the time
Oh
he got
yeah,
to the
he'd been with the
Bears?
Cowboys for a while before that.
That's horrendous. All right, put him there. Put him there.
Like if there was ever hope that they might have been the franchise, I think they are Legends
Fair.
of Soldiers Field.
Okay, I respect that. Oof, that's
all right.
That one's the biggest kick in the dick I think so far.
Craig Krenzel.
Oh, I spoke too soon. There's the bigger kick in the dick. Oh my goodness. I gotta put him in who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Shane Matthews now.
Oh boy.
I barely even remember Shane Matthews, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I thought I was young. I thought him and maybe Chandler were the same person for a while. So
I think maybe putting him in the best shape of his life then with Mr. Chandler probably feels fit, right?
All right, yeah. Now Josh McCown.
Oh, the franchise.
Yeah.
The franchise.
No doubt. Without a doubt. Josh McCown. Oh no, not there. Yeah.
Oh,
franchise.
Yeah. The franchise,
right.
Baby.
How about good old Jim Miller?
He's got to be a Legends of Soldiers Field, right?
Yeah,
for that
I agree.
2001 season alone, I think he's just up there. Like they shocked everybody. They weren't supposed to be good in the old NFC Central. Like they win the division. The Keith brothers at D tackle. Like
you know what? I actually might make an argument on two of our previous ones. I submit a bid to move Haney and Hutchinson down to Legends of Bourbonnais.
I can get behind that.
Okay. Because it's disrespectful to have Jim Miller in the same category as them.
I fully agree with that. Yes. I will.
Okay.
I was going to put Hutchinson personally in my best shape of his life, so I can live with Legends of Bourbonnais as a compromise. I really get
okay. It's hard. You get the legends mixed up sometimes.
It is hard, but definitely Jim Miller. I think he's earned that respect to be up in our Legends of Soldiers Field category.
Now we get the legend himself, Kyle Orton.
Oh, the franchise.
Yeah. I agree. I was nervous you were going to say Legends of Soldier Field, and I was going to have to have that internal battle.
My favorite story for you. So my second ever Bears game was 2005. The Chicago Bears took on the Carolina Panthers at Soldier Field. Jake Delhomme came in to get sacked 8 times by the Bears defense that day in a 13-7 Bears win. The only touchdown of the day.
Chicago football.
The only touchdown of the day, a curl route in the end zone from Kyle Orton to Musin Muhammad. He does the celebration against his old team. Robbie Gold gets a couple of field goals, and the Bears win, baby. It was a day. I was like 10 years old. I was like, this is fucking awesome. Franchise, Kyle Orton, baby. Let's go.
Absolutely. I'm with you. All right. Now we have Nathan Peterman.
Ooh.
He barely meets the criteria for this list,
I know.
but he's on it.
He's on it. He's there. Where do you put him, Q? I want to know where you've got him. I'm intrigued.
Best shape of his life, I think.
Okay, that's where I was leaning. Okay, we're on the same page here. I like that because like we're one John Gruden getting back on TV away from being like, and this guy Nathan Peterman, like holy hell, yeah, best shape of his life for sure.
Now we got Trevor Siemian.
Ooh.
I'm thinking Axel, but I can be dissuaded.
Yeah, I was between there and Bourbonnais. That's kind of where I was putting him. I think I liked Trevor Siemian. I know he didn't do dick as a Bear, but like he had a pretty decent NFL career, all things considered. As technically a 7th round pick. I mean,
I think he's still somewhere. I think he got signed somewhere.
I think you're right. I think he did. I'm gonna, as you put him in the category,
because he was only let go because the Bears wanted to get PJ Walker, who then couldn't beat out Tyson Bagent. It's not like Siemian was solid when he came into the Bears last year too. Aside from the injury, like the injury was the only thing that held him back.
Oh, that's right. He is a practice squad member with the New York Jets.
Okay, so the fact that he's on a practice squad right now, I think it's got to be Bourbonnais.
I can get behind that. Yeah. But yeah, I had nothing wrong with Trevor Siemian.
Yeah.
Northwestern alumni.
Now we got one left, saving the best for last.
Oh boy.
Former NFL Europe championship game MVP, Jonathan Quinn.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Oh. You know what's more pathetic about this, Q, is that he qualifies based on the criteria. I think that's the real kicker here, is that he qualifies in this category.
He started multiple games. It's not like it was like a one. When you saw NFL Europe championship game MVP, the little light went off in your head of like, maybe
the next Kurt Warner.
And then you realize as soon as a defender ran at him, he just threw the ball out of bounds.
Turtled into his shell and cowered away. 100%. Oh my goodness. I personally am throwing him in the who the fuck is this guy category. Yeah. Okay, good.
That's the only
same page here. Yeah. Wow.
Do we need to even anything out for another and rooting for him outside of Henry Burris? Or is Henry Burris the only one deserving of he's the only who the F is this guy that was enough to say he should go up to rooting for him?
I think the latter is exactly what we're going with here.
The only reason I had a rooting for him category was because I felt bad putting Henry Burris in the who the F is this guy.
I respect that. Then for that reason, I think he gets a category to himself. I think that's completely fair.
All right. Well, him and Mitch's Camry.
Sure, of course.
Corolla. Was it a Corolla or a Camry?
That looks like a Camry.
Okay. And Mitch's Camry. Not Mitch himself. Mitch himself didn't qualify for this, but the Camry made you wonder, who's this guy?
Yeah, who the fuck?
And then you're rooting for him because he's driving a Camry.
Because he's just a normal guy.
All right, so the penultimate Bears backup quarterback rankings. We got him here. I'm gonna take a snip of this. I'm gonna shoot it to you so you can put it out on the Bears Twitter account.
Please do. Electric. Absolutely electric. This is what we do on Halloween, folks. You're not getting this anywhere else in the world of Bears podcasting and shows. Only here at Bears on Tap do you get a tier Bears quarterback backups on Halloween. If you needed a Q, I got my dose of spooky adrenaline today from some of these names. So I think we accomplished the goal here on Halloween.
Oh my God. Look at the Jonathan Quinn jersey. Do you remember that jersey?
The dark
blue, the worst thing on earth.
The dark blue numbers were tragic. Do you remember when those were available in Madden, where you could play as the dark blue number
Yes.
orange ones, or the white orange ones?
Yeah. Ugh, just awful.
Brutal. That's a dark era of Bears football. But you
It
know what?
really is.
Quite frankly, the last 20 years have been a dark era of Bears football,
Yeah.
as highlighted by this list. I mean,
Yeah.
this list nails
Since
it.
Byron Lovey, it's been pretty about as dark as it can get.
Yeah, it really has, man. And even in those early Lovey days, like 2000, because Lovey came in at what, 04?
Oh yeah, 04.
So I mean, that first year of Lovey was rough. 04 was a tough year.
Yeah.
But like, I think prime early part of the century, like 01, 02, 03 were like, or well, not 01, sorry, 02, 03 were
03.
like, whoa.
03 was rock bottom.
Yeah. Playing at
Like
down
that
at
was
UI.
playing in
Yeah.
Champaign Urbana,
Yep.
like
Yep.
and you just couldn't win and nothing was going right. Your rookie quarterback got injured like week 1 and then like or whatever it was. No, or did he sit? He sat a lot of that year, I think.
I think
Didn't
so.
he?
I think Rex sat quite a bit. I think Rex got hurt more in 04.
Or no, I think you're right. 03 he sat until late in the season and then he got hurt. Like I want to say he started week 15 and then got hurt in week 16 or something, which was quite the omen for what was to come.
Yeah.
When everyone makes their arguments for why quarterbacks should sit, I wonder why Rex Grossman's never brought up.
Probably just because nobody even remembers that he was alive.
Oh yeah, it was. I remember I was so excited for his first start. It was electric.
I mean, I'm looking at the numbers right now, dude. 03, he only played 3 games. Went 2-1 as a starter.
Yeah.
But only played 3 games. 3 games in 04.
I remember I was so excited about a pass interference call on Bernard Berrien being like the highlight of the game.
Yikes. That's when you know, man. That's when you know. 04, 3 games. 05, only 2 games. I mean, that was the Kyle Orton year, which that was a fun year. I mean, Kyle Orton
One
played
of the most magical football seasons of all time. If I'm being like, that was the season, like 01 is what made me into a Bears fan, but 03 or 05 is what immortalized the Bears.
Solidified it. Yeah.
It was like you started like 0-3 with a random rookie QB out of Purdue as your starter, and you're like, why am I watching this? Well, because my dad's watching, I guess I'll keep watching. And then it's like it just all completely turns around. It's like, how is this like it just defies all logic. That was the most magical season of all time.
Facts. Yeah, that 11-5 run. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I still have that.
They won
NFC
like
North
8 games in a row after losing the first 3.
I've got that NFC North title hat still somewhere. Like I have that hat. That was like one of my first Bears hats. I think I gotta just remember the NFL like sideline hats that year where it was like the middle was the logo, but then it had like the 2 stripes that were like the secondary logo like in there. That was like my first Bears hat. And then the second one was the 05 NFC North Champions hat. Like that hat is still somewhere in my house right now. Like I need to find that hat. I will wear it on an episode if I find it because it was that good. But yeah, man. And then obviously 06, he plays a full year, goes 13-3. 07, only 8 games from Rex. 08, only 4 games. And then by 09, he was in Houston and then 2 years in Washington, played 13 games in that 2011 season for Washington. And then he was out of the league.
We'll never forget the sex cannon.
Never forget Sexy Rexy, man. Never forget Sexy Rexy.
Release the dragon, man.
Release the dragon. I'll tell you what, Q. We talked about a lot today from Sunday Night Football to what's going on in the Bears front office to the Montez Sweat trade to JJ and everything in between. The backup quarterback tears at the end was the chef's kiss on top. Let's be honest. But Q, before we start to wind this thing down, buddy, any final thoughts for us here on Halloween?
This defense might actually be good with Montez Sweat. If JJ's still here, if Brisker or Jackson or both of them could get healthy and back, I really think this might be a good defense.
I had that thought too. I literally did. I was like, does Sweat really make this defense like okay enough where they're not going to be total ass
I
down
mean,
the stretch?
if you're getting a little pass rush from Dexter, he's going to make Ngakoue suddenly better because suddenly Ngakoue is not getting all the attention from the opposing offenses. Like, and then you're talking about a guy who I think is pretty respected around the league as your cornerback one, and some upside in the nickel and in cornerback two, like, and some talented linebackers. Like, I think this defense might actually have something going for it as long as the scheme will allow it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a great final thought. I think that's also an incredible moment to once again remind you go to ontapsportsnet.com, check out Q's article about what Montez Sweat is going to bring to this Bears defense. You go into some great detail about it there. So, encouraging everybody to go read that. It's a great read, as always, as is everything that is written by our friend Mr. Q here. Q, from a Bears standpoint, I like the Montez Sweat deal. I really do. My concern is just being able to get him under contract for. Yeah, exactly. It's the backside of everything. It's not the player itself. I think the player itself is a really good addition and fit for what the Bears want to do. That being said, just get the dude under contract, and my stress levels will decrease immensely because then I don't have to worry about who is the GM going into next year because at least you got one impact player that's under contract going forward. And I think that's critically important for really just the franchise at this point. I think you need a couple of guys in place going forward. Otherwise, it's going to get really ugly here. Q, last thought from me. I said guess my costume in my little name tag. I told you before the show what it was. It was to be a happy Bears fan, and then we got on this show, and then my costume disappeared. So that's neither here nor there. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for everybody that tuned into the comments and with us on YouTube, everybody over on the Facebook as well as on X. We appreciate you guys. This was another episode of Bears on Tap. Happy Halloween, trades and treats, the name of today's episode. Happy Halloween to you, my friend. I don't know if you've gotten a lot of trick-or-treaters or not. We have gotten none. I live in the woods. Nobody even knows where my house is. So I haven't seen a trick-or-treater in 4 years. But nonetheless, before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody Bears on Tap is one of two Bears shows here at the On Tap Sports Network. Check out our friends over at the Bears Nation Pod. They do a great job. They're live every Monday and Wednesday. Be sure to tune in for that over here on the YouTubes. And as well, follow us at Bears on Tap on the socials, at Butkus Stats. I am at Loose on Tap. Be sure to follow our good buddy at Juice on Tap, who was unable to join us tonight due to a late conflict. So hopefully everything is good with our friend, Mr. Juice. Q, you know the drill. We got everything over at ontapsportsnet.com. Go check it out at OnTap Sportsnet on the socials, the OnTap Sports Network. Check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Always a pleasure, my friend. Happy Halloween to you, sir. And Bears football is on the horizon. They travel to New Orleans this coming weekend. Really quick, score prediction?
Bears 16, Saints 13, because life's too short to pick against the Bears.
I respect that, but that's going to be an ugly game. I'm going to take the Bears. I'm going to say Bears 23, Saints 20. I think it comes down to a field goal at the end. Dare I say shades of that Houston Texans game from a year ago at Soldier Field, where it was just kind of not a really pretty game by any means, but somehow a lot of points were scored. That's kind of what I think this weekend might become for the Bears down in the Big Easy. But nonetheless, Q, what do you say, buddy? We get out here the only way we know how? Bear down, baby.
Bear down.